we're coming to the end of our Bidayat Al-Hidaya series, and I think we have like 2 more classes left, inshallah. So this section is, Ghazālī speaks very briefly on this section, and the reason is because he has already spoken about this at length. So he talks a little bit about it, and then he goes into the adab you have with other creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he starts breaking down different relationships and stuff, and that's where kind of the book culminates and it ends. Who is the creator? He's the companion that never parts you, that never leaves you. He's always there by you. He's always with you. Whether you are at home or you are traveling, asleep or awake, in life or death, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never leaves your side. He's always there. He's that one constant from before your inception till your termination and your resurrection, that He will always be there, and He will be that consistent entity, the consistent being by your side. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wassalam says, Ya Rabbi, ayna abghika? Ya Allah, where can I find you? He said, Ibghini inda al-munkasirati qulubuhum, fa inni adnu minhum kulla yawmin, ba'an lawla dhalika latahaddamu. He said, find me by the broken hearts, because I'm close to them and I'm near to them. And every day, I come closer to them when they're shattered. And had that not been the case, لَتَهَدَّمُوا, they would have completely been into smithereens. They would have been completely destroyed. Iqbal has a poem. I've mentioned it a few times. It's a very beautiful poem. It's also very difficult in terms of its Urdu and its language and its caliber. He says, Tu bacha bacha ke na rakh usse, ye aina hai wo aina. Tu bacha bacha ke na rakh usse, ye aina hai wo aina, ke shikasta ho to aziz tar hai nigah hai aina saaz mein. So he gives the example of, take your phone, right? You put a screen cover on front, what is it, the new iPhone 15? This came out today. I think the greatest upgrade they had was the USB-C thing. Anyone follow Apple products here? No, you're one of the guys? You're an Apple guy? That's it. Everybody else is Android here? I'm very loyal to my Apples. I cheated on Apple once, and I went to Note 4 or 3 or 4, and then after that I came back. I had an Ajib story. My Note 4, I forgot it on top of my car one time, and I drove off, and I flew on the side of a highway. Wallah. And then I found it in the masjid. One of the brothers was cleaning by the highway, found a phone, brought it and left it in the lost and found it in the masjid. The phone was destroyed, but I found it at the end of the day. So you put this screen cover on top, you put something in the back. Why? So that it doesn't become like this. It'll shatter and it's broken. And so Iqbal says, Tu bacha bacha ke na rakh usse. He gives the example, the metaphor of the, oh my God, it's so broken with piece of phone here. He says that Tu bacha bacha ke na rakh usse, ye aina hai wo aina. That this heart is that mirror or that screen. Ke shikasta ho. That when it cracks, the more it cracks, to aziz tar hai nigah hai aina saaz mein. It becomes more beautiful in the eyes of the maker of this mirror. We always try to not get heartbroken. Tu bacha bacha ke na rakh usse. We tread carefully. Friendships, relationships, everything, very careful. So Iqbal says, "Tu bacha bacha ke na rakh usse." The point of it is for it to get shattered. And when it gets shattered, then and only then, the pieces of it will be raised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Khaja Azizuddin Majzoub, rahimahullah, had a poem. As a Thani rahimahullah, I really liked this poem. The poem was, हर तमन्ना दिल से रुखसत हो गई, अब तो आजा, अब तो खलवत हो गई. That every desire, every need, every want has left my heart. Ya Allah, now my heart is barren, it's empty. Ab to aja, now come. Ab to khali hai, right? It's just ab to khalwat hai. That's just you and me now in here. This is in Hilyatul Awliya. Where can I find you, Ya Allah? If you understand this, then you will make Allah your friend and not look for friendship in people. Why? Because people are transitory. People come, people go. Friends you had when you were in, the friends that you had when you were in elementary school are not the same friends that you have when you're in middle school. The friends you have in middle school are not the same friends you have in high school and college and so on and so forth. Your friend groups change, right? The people that like you grew up with in the sandbox, how many of them do you still hang out with today? Most of your implants, you didn't grow up over here. So like, you probably don't have that relevancy of it. And that changes over time. The people in your life, in your circle, they change. They won't remain the same. The older you get, your social class, the people you're working with, your job, friends, and all of that, your colleagues, that's going to change. You'll get a promotion, your job will shift, and people will change around you. And people who you thought that, you could never separate from, you end up separating from them. There was a poem in Tirmidhi, وَكُنَّا كَنَدْمَا جَذِيمَةَ حِقْبَةٍ. We were like two peas in a pod. We never thought that we would split. कौन कहता है हम तुम में जुदाई होगी, ये हवाई किसी दुश्मन ने उड़ाई होगी. So he says, look for that friend that will remain constant and forever. You cannot do this all the time. Then make a portion of the night or day where you speak to Allah, وَتَلَذَّذْ, and you enjoy the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You enjoy conversing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you can't remember Allah all the time, then remember Him at least sometimes. Like I said, Ghazālī was very brief on this point because he's spoken about this earlier. We did like a whole few sessions on this topic. Now, the adab of entering the majestic company of Allah. What does that mean? This is in Arabic, there is something called hadara. Hadara means to be present. Hadir is to be present. Istihdar, this alif sin ta, when it's a prefix on a word, it means to summon something, to seek something, to desire something. So ghafara means to forgive. Istighfar means to seek forgiveness. So hadara means to be present, and istihdar means to seek presence. So the scholars would say, do istihdar of Allah. Seek that you are in the presence of Allah, or that Allah is in your presence. Either that you can see Him, or know that He can see you. Now, how do you do this istihdar? What should be ricocheting in your mind? What should be going through your mind at this time when you are presenting yourself in the company of Allah? Keep the eyes down. Right? In salah, what are we taught? Look down. So that, there's a level of humility. And I know in American culture, you look people straight into the eyes. But the adab is to look down. Full concentration. Work on this. Why is it that I cannot concentrate for even a few minutes with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I can watch a whole movie, show, group chat, all of those things for hours. I don't get Time just goes by, I don't realize anything. Well, why is it that I cannot concentrate fully with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Remaining silent. Silence helps you think out loud. Silence helps you think out loud. Keeping the limbs still, especially in salah. My Ustad Mufti rahmatullahi alayhi said once, that if your heart was connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your body would remain still in prayer. Some people have a habit of constantly fidgeting, going this and that and so on and so forth. But if your heart is connected to Allah fully, then your body itself will come into a trance, it will become peaceful. Hastening to fulfill His commands. Whatever obligations Allah has placed on you, do them quickly. Avoid those things that Allah has prohibited upon you. Those actions that He has forbidden, avoid them. Do not object to His decree. What Allah has decided for you, accept it. And understand that whatever He has decided is good for you. Constant remembrance of Him, persevering in contemplation. That through good or grief, you're reflecting on Allah, you're contemplating on Allah, you're reflecting on Allah, you're persevering through Allah, for Allah, with Allah. That you're persevering, you're pushing through your boundaries for your comfort zone, things that are difficult for you, lillah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Giving preference to the truth, even if it is against yourself. To be able to call yourself out. It's easy to call others out, but to be able to call yourself out. Don't put hope in the creation. The more you put hope in people, the more they let you down. The more you put hope in Allah, He'll raise you up. And He'll make things manifest from the unseen. Having humility in awe of Him. Be humble, but let that feel that the weight of it kind of like holding you down. Like you should start shivering in reflections and when you're reflecting on the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like there should be a chill down your spine. Like you should have that moment where you're thinking to yourself that one day I will be in front of my Creator, and my Creator will be gazing upon me, and my Creator will be seeing me, and I will have to give account for everything. Sufyan ibn Uyayna rahimahullah, the great Tabi'i. I was reading one of his mawqulas, and he mentioned something powerful. He says people commit sins for two reasons. Number one, shahwa. Number two, takabbur, pride. He says that the person who commits sins in terms of out of mere desire, then that person is like Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. He ate the fruit through desire. And that mistake that he made, Allah forgave him for it. And then Iblis, Shaitan, made the same mistake, made his mistake himself, but his mistake was out of arrogance. Have a feeling of brokenness inside. Like I mentioned in Iqbal's poem. Feel yourself broken inside. Be modest in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't flex in front of Allah. Know that whatever is given can be taken. Whatever is taken can be given. Trust that Allah will provide your rizq. Knowing with certainty the best choice is Allah's choice. That whatever Allah has decided, you may not understand it right now. You may not see the fruits of it right now. but there's hikmah and wisdom in it. Someone wants to buy a car. They really love that car and they enjoy that car. And that car was destined to get into a crash. That car was destined to be a means of problem for them. The place I was living right before this, in Frisco, we've been to that place. It was a really nice place. It was like, I've never seen an apartment like this. It was like 2 stories, and like the first floor was the living room with like a 30-foot ceiling. And the second floor was like the bedroom that looks onto it. It was a really nice apartment. It was really cheap, to $1,000. In those days, you don't even get those. In Frisco too, right next to Legacy West. What is that? The cowboy place. Star? The Star. But I loved that place. When I moved to Plano, obviously the drive became a little further. For like 5 minutes more. But still. So I shifted, but I always missed that spot a lot. So months later, I went and I visited. I said, let me go see the apartment that I want to stay in. And my neighbor was Muslim. When I went there and asked, they said, about 2-3 months after you left, there was a fire that broke out. And that whole apartment burned down. And that apartment's no more. So sometimes you think, عسى أن تكرهوا شيئا وهو خير لكم وعسى أن تحبوا شيئا وهو كره لكم والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. Did I read it right or did I make a mistake in the verse? شر لكم not كره لكم. There's not another verse that says كره in it? It's shar? I make a mistake in the Quran, correct it. These are the adab for a friend who never leaves your side. This is the adab with your creator, with Allah. The etiquettes of the scholar. This is for me, not for you. But it's good for me to say it out loud because everything from what Ghazālī mentions is something that I can learn and that I lack. So this is a reminder for myself and only myself. Tolerance. We have to have a lot of patience. And tolerate a lot what people say and what a lot of people do. And if you are treading in the path of Nabuwah, you will get the same challenges and tests as Anbiya do. Because the Prophet ﷺ, a Sahabi asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ya Rasulullah, the Prophet ﷺ told him one day, he said, ask me anything. He said, Murafaqatuka bil Jannah. I want to be with you in Jannah. He said, Awa ghayra dhalik, ask for anything else. He said, that's what I want. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you want my proximity, then get ready for a life of difficulty. For those, the other day, last Friday I think it was that I gave that khutbah, right? You guys were there, right? Yeah. Literally all I did was from the birth of the Prophet ﷺ till his demise, just talk about all the sad things that were happening around there. You would literally think that Medina was always as depressed. Either someone's dying or either something's happening or, problems at every junction of the way. Carrying yourself with dignity in the company of people. Or Asatidha used to say something very important. They used to say something I never learned. They said never, what am I going to say this to you guys? Refraining from showing hoidiness in front of the creation, except tyrants. When someone does something wrong, yes, stand up and call them out on it. Preferring a low status in gatherings and meetings. Not wanting to be pointed at or asked for their opinions or something. That doesn't mean that the community shouldn't. It just means that your heart shouldn't desire it. There's a difference between the two, right? You shouldn't desire it. Avoiding jokes. The amount of jokes that we probably say in a week or something in our lecture is probably how much we heard in an entire year from our teachers or in khutbah or something. It wasn't normal growing up hearing an imam joke in a khutbah or a lecture or talk. Very rare, once or twice, once maybe in a whole lecture or in a few lectures. Now it's common. Gentleness with students, no matter how much they annoy you. Mufti Ibrahim Desai rahimahullah once said, one of his students had offended him in something. And he said, Mufti Sahib, forgive me. He said, why? He said, you're like children to me. I love you like my own children. How can I can be upset, but I cannot hold it inside. At the end of the day, the Ustad sees this, and the Prophet ﷺ said this, right? That Ana bi manzili walidikum, I'm like a father to you in terms of as a teacher. And that's the maqam in the sense, and that's unless you are a teacher and have taught like the Islamic sciences, it's very hard to explain the amount of like muhabba and the amount of like hope you have with students, right? That you hope that they will, really excel and do great. Just the way I have a majlis, I learned it from my teacher Mufti Rada. He has one every Sunday, and a bunch of scholars would come and sit around there. But whenever we'd visit, he'd tell us to come and say a few words. All these big scholars, and I'm like the age of their grandkids. And so I would speak 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And one time, Dr. Abdul Razak Iskandar's kid, he was a big scholar to Dr. Abdul Razak Iskandar. Passed away, Allah yarhamhu. His kid spoke, and he was just bawled out in tears. Because Mufti taught him in the 80s. And he said that our teachers push us forward, not because we're deserving, but because they want to see that the seeds they planted in us, have they bore any fruits or not. Showing patience to the arrogant student who objects. You always have that one student who has something smart to say, and they're sent min Allah. Correcting the slow student with patience and not to be annoyed with them. That is a big challenge. That the one who is slow, to deal with them and to work with them and to be able to be patient through their shortcomings. Not to be proud to say, I don't know. If you don't know something, you should say, I don't know. Giving full attention to the questioner and accepting his valid evidence. Someone brings some evidence genuinely and honestly, then you should accept it. Submitting to the truth when you have erred. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he made a decision where he said that the women are charging too much for their mahar. What is this $50,000, $100,000 mahar? What is this? That's a down payment for a house. And even that you have 30 years. And one of the women gets up and says, Umar, how dare you? When the Quran says that we can ask for a qintar, a mountain of gold, who are you? Despite him being Khalifa and everything, steps back and says, I accept my fault, I'm wrong. It is the responsibility of the teacher to prevent the student from acquiring harmful knowledge too, and giving them mashwara when they are going down a wrong path. And to advise them to make better decisions in their journeys. All I did was basically just translate what Ghazālī said. So you can check his book, and I didn't add anything into it. Deterring the student to desire anything other than Allah in their pursuit of knowledge. Preventing the student from communal obligation. This is very important. A lot of people didn't understand my perspective on this. And this is a very bedrock principle of mine. That the student, before they start giving back to the community, they should have fulfilled their individual responsibility, their tarbiyah, their tazkiyah, their ilm, before going out, before venturing and doing anything from their own side, leading anything, doing anything. If their own tarbiyah is not done, then they will go with naqis, they will go with deficiency. And Ghazālī mentions this. Anyway, finally, I didn't want to type this stuff up, but I'll just read through this. The etiquette of the student. If you are a student, then the manners of a student with the teachers are to be the first to greet and say salam, not to speak too much in their presence, not to speak unless asked something by the teacher, not to ask questions without first seeking permission. This is like raising your hand. Not to say in contradiction to what he has said, and say so-and-so other scholar says something. That's bad adab. If someone has a different opinions, you don't have to mention that scholar's name, because then now that person's rebuttaling that individual. Whenever people do this, usually I don't even answer the question, because it's bad adab. If you have, you can ask, well, what about this opinion? I was once in Darul Zakaria where Fasa'a Sabahal Mundhirin was read instead of Mundharin. And some scholars thought that the salah broke. Mufti Radha gave the opinion that the salah didn't break. Now there was two factions in the institute. Some scholars believed it did, who were masters of qira. Mufti is the Grand Mufti. And I was the guy going between each of them and asking them, okay, what about this, what about this? But never once would I say, this sheikh said this, and what is your response? Because that then creates animosity. It shouldn't be done. Not to point out something contrary to their opinion on the basis that you think you are more learned than the teacher. You know better. Not to whisper to other students in the gathering. While you're in the lecture or talk, whispering to another student is su'e adab. Now remember one thing, that it's not actually that you're doing adab of the individual. It's what they possess of the Quran and Hadith. That's what you are actually respecting. The individual is just the shell. The asl that you are actually worshipping, respecting, is the Quran and Hadith that is embodied over there. Otherwise the person is irrelevant. Not to look around, be attentive, sit with good manners. When we studied Hadith, right? Hadith is like very prolific and it's a very like important subject. We sat in tashahhud position. Sitting cross-legged was considered disrespectful, to the point that unless you had like, you had a weight situation or a problem with your foot, a student sitting cross-legged while listening to hadith and was considered like disrespectful. And Mufti Sayyid Mutara, the teacher of half these Azad graduates, Mufti Muntasir, Mufti Numan, who also has Azad, Mufti Tawsif, Mufti Azim Garland, they're all from the same person. Though he was a really big guy, he would always sit cross-legged and teach for 2 hours like that. Because his ustad did the same thing. And that's the adab of when you're in front of hadith, and that's the adab you sit in front of hadith. Because this is the kalam of Rasulullah, as if Nabi alayhi salam is there. That's how you have to treat it. The Quran, Allah says, well, وَإِذَا قُرِيَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا. Quran is recited, listen and stay quiet. Hadith, Allah says that if you disrespect the words of the Prophet ﷺ, your amal and your good deeds will just get erased, and you wouldn't even know. وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. And you won't even know that this has happened to you. Not to burden your teacher with questions, one after another, one after another, one after another, unless you're like me, who likes fiqh fiction. When he is tired or weary, to stand when he stands. This is from the adab. Not to follow him from the gathering. Some people make a huge mistake on this thing. When a person is leaving, that's when they have the questions. Hey, there's office hours and times for these type of things. You are coming in a time that suits you, not respecting the ilm. And you want it at that moment, just text, I want this answer right now. Unless you have that relationship with the person, that's a different story. But for the average person, like they want the answer right now, that's against the adab. It's against the etiquettes and the mannerism. Mufti Rida al-Haq used to walk from one class to another between his periods. And I used to be one of the students that would carry the books. That situation was different. I would always come up with a question, think of a question the whole day, to bring up a really good question to Mufti. But he had nothing else to do, right? He has to get from point A to point B. So I'm utilizing that time. And then when he would be going home, I would only ask those questions that could be answered by the time he got to his house. Not something long. To ask him questions on the way to his home until he reaches there. And not to form a bad opinion regarding the actions that appear outwardly to be blameworthy. For he knows better about his personal affairs. I wanted to say two things about this thing. The first thing is that Allah in the Quran says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. That out of everyone, the ulama are the ones that truly fear Allah. Why does Allah say this? Innama, I think I mentioned this before. What does this mean? If the person can disobey Allah, every human slips and everyone makes mistakes and everyone has their sins. We were studying that hadith in Musnad Ahmad today, right? Where that one Sahabi was, he comes and he enters the gathering and he says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and so on, and he starts leaving. And one of the guy goes like, Wallahi, inni ubghiduhu fillah. I swear to Allah, I hate him for the sake of Allah. I was like, what the heck? It's a bit sama qult, man, what are you saying? They told someone, I said, man, go tell him this. So one of the guys went and told him, like, yo, that guy just said this about you. He went straight to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He arrives to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says that, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what's wrong with this guy? Did I do something? He hates me for the sake of Allah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam calls him. He says, what happened? He said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this man, never seen him pray anything extra. No tahajjud, doesn't wake up at night for tahajjud, ishraq, nothing. The man says to him, have you seen me miss any of my obligatory prayers or deficiency in there? He said, no. He said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this man never fasts any Monday, Thursday, any extra days. He said, do I fast all days of Ramadan? He said, yeah. He said, do I any shortcomings? He said, no. He said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this man never gives any sadaqah, charity to me. He's a stingy man. He said, do I give my zakat full? He said, yeah. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turns around to that man, because he did all of those things extra. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turns to him and says, boom, get up from here and go, for he is better than you. Though he's done less than you, he's done better than you. So the weight in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't know. And ilm has a daraja. Ilm is a sifat of Allah. And that was the first test between malaika and insan, was ilm. The second thing is that there is a constant dua that we would make as students, was that Allahumma astur anni uyuba muallimi. Ya Allah, conceal the faults of our teachers from us. Everyone's human. Everyone's going to have faults. Everyone's going to have shortcomings. Right? But Allahumma astur anni uyuba muallimi. Let the student recall the words of the great Khidr. He said, have you made a hole in the boat to drown the owners of it? Indeed, you have done a peculiar action. Musa alayhi salam made a mistake. Though how it's hard to justify a person damaging someone else's property. But then again, Musa alayhi salam made the mistake of judging the teacher's action, because he didn't know what the teacher knew. So that is why try to always keep personal fun of this. We'll give a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes for